Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for making it at a New Year's Eve, New Year's. So it shows how important studying is for us. So just a short recap of the last study in chapter 15. We have discovered the idea of a tzaddik whose service of God come to him extremely easy. No challenge. It's natural. Just like I run away from poison, he runs away from gossiping. Just like I love to spend time with my family, he loves spending time connecting to God. This is all natural. Then you have the Beinoni, for which he conducts himself perfectly like a tzaddik, except that it comes with great, great efforts, a lot of hardship. One might ask, it's not fair. Why? And what the rabbi until now explained to us, that to be called a servant of God, you must be serving God continually. If you have achieved that goal and you have already established this relationship and it's a smooth sailing, you're not a servant of God. You are one who serves God in the past, so to say. To be a servant of God, to worship God, there has to be a challenge continuously. And that's why the Beinoni is the majority. We should all strive to reach, because this is where God wants to see us putting an effort, as opposed to a tzaddik whose challenges are not there. That's so far what we studied. The second part, the last part of the chapter, the rabbi is going to talk about an idea that actually in modern psychology, it's been discussed and discovered a lot. And we'll see the similarities. The idea of doing things by rote, getting used to continuously doing something out of rote, because I was raised that way, or I trained myself. Let's say,
so it's a habit.
A habit. Repetition, right? So I'm asking you, doing something out of a habit, is it positive or not so?
Negative.
Negative. Why?
Because you really can't put your heart into it. You're just doing it.
You don't put your heart, you only do it
Because you just know by memory, you just keep
as a
repeating it.
systematic, like a robot.
Right.
Anybody else? So I'm going to share with you there is great positivity to habit. If I put myself into the habit of getting up at 6:45 every day, it's not going to be a challenge anymore, and it will be easier for me, even if I went to bed late. Do we all agree on that?
Yes.
If I take myself a habit to eating healthy or going to the gym twice a week, then even if I had a wedding or a meeting late at night, I will be there at the gym. Why? Because it's a habit. It's something I got used to.
I was referring to the fact that if you daven, you have to put your without.
All right, I hear you. We'll get there soon. Children, part of educating children is to instill good habits. That's not how you speak to an adult. That's not how make your bed, get dressed, make sure your shoes are tied. These are habits that we're training them. Why is it so important? Actually, it's crucial, is because if we want them to be good people in the way they speak, or the way they think, their emotions, their conduct, it starts with a habit. Once you have established a habit, it keeps going and it comes easy. And if someone challenges it, it's going to be a lot harder to deviate. So if I take a habit of eating healthy, I might go to a wedding where the smorgasbord is so alluring, but I know it's not healthy. I stay away. If I don't have that healthy habit, it's going to be a lot easier for me to misbehave. We all agree on that?
Yep.
In modern psychology, yes, Heidi?
I think also if there's a habit, then you have the foundation. So then to Harry's point, you could maybe put your heart into learning or things that are more complex, because the easy things, well, things that we hope are easy, you just kind of do naturally.
So a habit is extremely positive trait. Just like you say, I will take part of it, which is foundation. It sets a good, solid foundation. In fact, in Torah, we see how important habits is. We have a korban, a sacrifice called Tamid. There is a sacrifice that was brought in the morning and in the afternoon every single day, including Yom Kippur, including Shabbat. Cooking on Shabbat, they cooked the meat on Shabbat, they put it on the fire, they slaughter an animal on Shabbat, taking out blood, letting blood from my finger on Shabbat is a sin. For my teeth, we're not allowed to brush teeth because the gums can let blood. They slaughter animals. And one of the reasons are because there has to be something out of a habit as part of our life. We need to understand good traits. If I want to have good behavior, I just study a book on psychology that says that the brain is looking for using less electricity, less energy in doing things. And doing something by habit takes less energy to the brain, simple. Even though it's a complex behavior, driving to shul or getting dressed, if I have a habit for something, the brains does it by itself. That's why we forget about it. Many times we pray by a habit of prayer. We don't even know if we said it. Didn't we say it? I don't know if it happens to you. It happens to me. I started a midah and I don't know. Did I say Shema today? Did I say Vayvarach? Why are you laughing? I thought it's only me. And sometimes I say to myself, I have to put a video of myself to check, to make sure I did say that part of prayers, because I don't remember saying that. And the answer is because we have developed a habit, we don't even realize what we're doing. How many times if I have to go, it happened to me just recently, I was supposed to go somewhere out of the usual, and I kept going. I didn't make the right turn, because I have a habit. Once I get on 41, you keep going some downtown. So korban.
Many times when I go by, I go, oh, I'm multiple in here.
So we have korban tamid. I also want to share with you that when a person goes up to heaven, one of the questions, there is a list of questions that is being asked. He needs to answer, and there is no cheating there. The first is, did you deal in business with honesty? The third question is, Kavata itim la Torah. Have you created a habit for the study of Torah? Kavata, likboa means a solid footing of a habit. Not lamadeta Torah, did you study Torah? Not did you toil in the study of Torah? Asakta ba Torah, which usually that's the language should be. Kavata itim la Torah. Et means timing or an appropriate time. According to the question, it is more valuable to make a set time to study than the actual studying. So we all have kavata itim. We can say we have a Torah study where we come together to study. This is a habit that God is expecting and wants from us. Do you understand that?
I want to know where these questions came from.
It's in the Talmud.
It is?
You don't know that
No.
they've been asked?
We ask, you ask a lot of questions and
No, there is a list.
yeah, and the walls and the doors and everything. They were witnesses.
Nasata venatata be'emunah. Have you heard that?
Yeah,
And the third question is kavata itim la
I
Torah.
remember
Okay, you don't remember.
that.
I don't need.
Convenient.
Touche.
I just want to share a story. Where is Ali?
Yeah.
What an unusual thing for you to share a story.
Huh?
Very unusual.
Very. Ali is getting me into the habit.
You know, Rabbi, the older I get, the smarter my father becomes. And the more I have forgotten what he said.
Here is the story very briefly. Where is he?
We're
I-
waiting for
I
you.
waited for you to tell a story. The fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, was at the time when the Bolsheviks took over the communists. And at the time, just before the communists took over, the government, the Tsar, wanted to reform Jewish education. It's been for generations, this was taking place. And they summoned all the rabbis in Russia, major big rabbis, into a committee for meeting. And again, it happened many, many times. The one I'm speaking about, they wanted to introduce certain requirements for someone to become a rabbi. Like he must have a degree. He needs to speak Russian. What they wanted is to make the Jewish leaders be impacted by, so to say, the street and bring it into the congregation and slowly making the children also study language and other topics. I'm not going to discuss the merits of it because this is not the case in America. It's a whole different story. And the rabbis, most of the rabbis, there were two leaders. The Hasidic leader was the Rebbe, the fifth Rebbe, and the non-Hasidic Rebbe, which was the Chofetz Chaim, I believe, which represented the Lithuanian group. They were the most famous, noted rabbis. The rest of the rabbis were rabbis, local rabbis, Hasidim, non-Hasidim. Most of the rabbis feared for their life, because if you vote against that, there may be a life-threatening situation. The Rebbe Rashab got up and he says, "No way, I will not allow it in my life, over my body. It is against Torah, because they're trying to chip parts of the Torah away, and they're doing it very slowly. But that's the goal, and therefore we need to disperse." And they actually dispersed. All the rabbis ran away. The second leader came to, I'm not sure if it's a Chofetz Chaim, but I think it was the Chofetz Chaim, for those of us who heard the name.
The Misnagdim?
The Misnagdim came to the Rebbe Rashab and says, how did you do that? Why did you do that? And he says, because I sense that what they do is against Torah. And the rabbi turned to him and says, how do you know it was against Torah? Seemingly, there is no sin that they asked. They didn't ask the rabbis to write a new rule that you have to walk on Shabbat or any sin. And the Rebbe Rashab turned to him and he says, when I was very young, I trained myself that my body will resist anything that against God. I trained myself. He walked on his body so hard that his body, the body sense that something is against God, he will reject it. And when they announce the list of what they want to improve, so to say, I could not resist it, because my body told me it's against God, and that's why I stood up. And that rabbi turned to me and he says, now I understand, because at first he was kind of rebuking him, so to say, how can you put your life on the line? He says, now I understand it and I accept it, and of course I'm going to vote with you. And when those two voted against that, the rest of the rabbis then, when they were asked to cast their vote, they voted against that. In other words, he trained his body that when the body sensed that something is not right, the body should reject it and not debate and not argue the pros and cons. That's the idea of habit. When you create a habit, if I create a habit when someone speaks not nice about somebody, I stay away, it comes automatically and we will be able to reject. If I train myself that I will not allow anyone to speak not nice about my friends, by habit, I will not allow, even if it's not directly against me, just listening will make me jump. Do you all agree on that? Mm-hmm. That's the idea of a habit. The problem of a habit is, as Harry was talking about, and we'll see two reasons later on, is that you are missing the life, the soul of the act. So if it's about performing a mitzvah or study Torah, and you do it out of a habit, you do not put your soul into it. Kabbalistic terminology, we call it body without soul, dead body. Dead body versus body that's alive is two separate entities, although they both have the same amount of limbs and they all look the same, but one is dead, the other is alive. Is it tangible? You can say yes, because that body can hear you, can respond to you, can kiss you, can love you, can go away from you. The other body stands still, there is no feeling. Whenever we do something out of a habit, our soul is not into it. What's the negative? Okay, what's the problem with this? When it comes to the service of God, you are losing the soul of the service of God, and there is something else. It will not last for a long time if it's a challenge. Habit is easy to do as long as there is no something that's challenging it. The moment you give it a challenge, you can fight for it. But if you don't feel like doing it and you don't put extra energy into doing it, it's not going to hold. It's going to fail. These are two negative traits that can prevent, that are not good for doing something out of a habit. Now back to our Beinoni. We talked last week, and I spoke, we didn't study today, we're going to study about the one who studied 100 times versus 1 and 1. Remember that?
Yes.
And I gave you an example of a taxi driver, as the Gemara says. The taxi driver from SRQ to Tampa, TPA, they'll charge $50. But if you want to go to downtown, which is another 1.5 miles, they'll charge you $75. Why? Because this is the route that they do back and forth. Making him go out of his way makes him actually lose more money, lose more customers, lose more time, etc. The same is about overtime. I was thinking about that. I saw that last time, 2 weeks ago, people didn't accept that well. So I have another example, overtime. If I work from 9 to 5 and I get $17 an hour, do you expect if I have to work from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock to get $17 an hour or no? Overtime, why? How can you explain that? Why overtime is time and a half, right? At least time and a half or more. Time and a half. Why is it time and a half?
You're tired?
Because I'm tired?
It's over the time that you work?
No, but they asked me to come at 1 p.m.
Oh,
They said to me, forget about the first 2 hours of the day, of working day, and come later. And the reason is it's out of the ordinary.
It takes away.
9 to 5, they give you back 2 hours in the morning. They say you can stay home later. They're not taking
In that case,
anything.
I don't necessarily pay overtime.
40 hours, as far as I know, but tell me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, if the working hours are 9 to 5, and they want me over the weekend, or they want me to be there until 7 o'clock, and they don't mind me coming late, do you think that they would pay time and a half, or they will not? No?
regular.
They will pay regular because it's within
Because
40
they-
hours?
Yeah?
Okay, so it's a bad example.
3 hours to get a video.
They'll make you management, they won't pay you overtime anyway.
But actually, no. If you make we're talking about 101 versus 100. So, okay, we go back to the example. You have a 40-hour week and they ask you to work 43 hours. They'll pay you three extra hours?
Yeah.
I'm asking you why they don't pay you $17 like they pay the other 40 hours.
They take it away from your life.
But they
take it
pay,
from your-
but they pay like every other hour they take
So,
away.
but that's why they're paying more, they're paying premium, because your life is being compromised.
But the first 40 hours, they also took away from you.
No,
The
but you
same
agree
value.
that work agreement.
No, you cannot be forced, you agree.
Correct.
And the explanation is it's out of the ordinary. When you are hired,
Totally.
if you are hired for a project, then hours don't matter. But when you are hired for hours and they tell you the work week is 40 hours, Then they ask you for 41 hours. What they did is they asked for something out of the ordinary. And for that, they're going to pay you a premium, not what they pay you for the first 40. They didn't take extra time from you. They took the same hour like the other 40 units, and they are not going to pay you like they pay you any one of the 40 hours. They pay you time and a half. And it used to be twice. And sometimes it's 3 times. If it's a higher job, if it's attorneys or doctors or professionals, they'll pay more than time and a half.
I used to get an extra day. For every time that I worked extra, I used to get an extra day.
An extra day.
Yeah, but not for an hour too. If I worked an extra day, if I worked on a Sunday, I would get an extra day.
And still get fully paid.
Yeah, of course. but
So
I-
it's
but I-
2 times.
Right.
So it's 2 times.
Yeah.
It's twice.
Yeah, I was paid to work, the work, not the hours. I didn't come in at 8. Whenever I came in, I just worked the job. It's a great setup. Never complained.
According to the Gemara, that's not Tanya. When you study with somebody 100 times, when you study something, those days they didn't have books. So anything they studied, they wanted to remember. Because they have no other chance of studying it again. They can't go to the library. So they studied 100 times. It's a very tedious and long process. Comparing that to 101 is no comparison. Because first 100, they don't call you a servant of God. Study 101 times, now you are emigrated to 101.
And what happened when we got to 102?
So that's the discussion we had last week. I see I'm getting into it way more than I thought, but I have a story for. There is a rabbi, it's a famous story in the Talmud. There is a Rabbi Frida. Rabbi Frida, he was a great sage, great teacher, but he had a student that was very, very, very slow. He would study with them every Mishnah, how many times?
101.
400 times. Can you do that? That's the problem. He would study with the student 400 times. One day, while he was studying with this student, a visitor came to inquire a question. And Rabbi Frida turned to him and he says, I'm busy studying with my student, but it's going to take a long time because I'm studying with him 400 times. When I'm done, I will make time for you. So if you can sit in the back and wait a minute. And the man went and sat down. Meanwhile, he continued teaching 400 times. When they were done 400 times, he turned to his student and says, did you understand? He said, no. He said to him, why? He says, as soon as you told the stranger that you're going to study 400 times and then you'll teach him, I kept worrying that you're going to cut it short. So every time you teach me one more, I'd say probably you might next one you're going to do faster or you're not going to do 400 times. I couldn't concentrate. So,
So another 400 times?
Rabbi Frida sat down and studied with him he says to him, forget about everybody.
Needed 400 times.
He says to him, 400, let's study from the beginning. Forget about every time, all the time we spent. And he studied with him 400 more times. A total of how many times? 800 times. An echo came from heaven that says God wanted to reward Rabbi Frida for his extraordinary patience to choose one of the two. Either he can live till 400 years, and you can imagine why, because of 400 extra times, or he and his entire generation go straight to heaven and they bypass purgatory, all the challenges. He thought about it for a moment and he says, I want the second choice. I want me and my generations to go to heaven. And suddenly an echo came from God who says, give him both. Give him both because he did double. I think that's my interpretation. So Rabbi Frida is one rabbi that lived 400 years. There's many stories in the Talmud about him because he studied 800 times with the student. That is what we call out of ordinary, extraordinary.
I know this sounds silly. He really kept a running count how many times?
Yes.
1, 2, 3.
Yes, yes.
Then he had to keep
What
on
a guy,
standing with
what
the
a guy.
same person, 400 extra times.
Lots
So he
of,
had to repeat the same thing 400 times.
one Mishnah, a paragraph of 5 lines, 400 times.
Repeating it 400 times. Okay, I might get it.
Now we're gonna go back to 2 more points. The first point is if I study 100 times because everybody else does it, does not have the value as if I studied 1 more time. Now, once it becomes a habit, I share that with you. You have got to get out of a habit. You have got to go an extra time. And in psychology, they always say that you need to have change. Otherwise, once you get into a habit, you're going to lose the excitement. It's not going to work. And I've discussed it in great length last time. I think we discussed it, that the life is vitality. Life is going out of the way. Life is not following a habit. I think last time, I gave you an example of a bird that got injured. How do you know that it's alive? Anybody remembers? If it falls into a stream of water and it swims against the stream. Anybody remembers that?
Yeah.
That's the idea of going out of the habit, not flowing with the tide. Flowing with the tide is a sign that perhaps the animal is damaged or injured, that it's not alive. The Rambam Maimonides gives another example, another exception. He says if there is a piece of wood or a limb, or a leaf underwater, and the bird is swimming with the tide, but faster than that piece of wood, then you know it's a healthy animal. In other words, you have 2 ways of defining an injured bird to tell if it's strong enough to be called alive. One is that it's swimming against the tide. Then you know it's healthy enough to fight the tide, so it's strong. Another one is it flows with the tide, but it goes faster than the tide. How do you know? Because there is a branch or a leaf that's there and it's going faster. In other words, sometimes you're facing a challenge because I'm using a simple terminology, but it applies many ways. You have an environment that's not healthy. You have to show that you're alive by fighting it, by going against the stream, that's called extraordinary, out of the ordinary. Sometimes the environment is a healthy environment because you created a good habit. You study 100 times. How do you tell that the person is alive? When they are faster than the tide. In other words, they do an extra time. That's the 101 compared to the bird that's swimming with the tide, because the tide is a healthy situation, but they're doing it faster than all the branches that are underwater. Did I make myself clear?
So in essence, what happens is you've got to constantly go beyond what you're doing to show that you're doing, like, for instance,
In order for me to be a servant of God, I must go out of the ordinary. If I do something because I did it yesterday and yesteryear, I have served God when I did it the first time. You can't call it a servant of God.
That servant was the one who had done it before, and serves God is the one who's doing it.
All right, whatever you call it, it's fine. In the terminology, it's called Oved Avaya, someone who serves God, Vasher Lo Avado, and one who does not serve God.
No, that's
So that's much easier in the Hebrew terminology. Again, I need to make clear, if I do something because I did it all my life, I may be called someone who is doing mitzvot. I may be the one who is not going to be punished for misbehaving, but you cannot call me a servant of God. A servant of God is someone I want to share with you, and I say to it full mouth because I'm married already for a long time, that if you want to be married and live a married life, not 2 people who are, the relationship is dead, which unfortunately it happens, and it happens more than you think. There has to be a renewed relationship continuously. We have to do things unusual change. I think I told you, we change between me and my wife all the time, not every day, but every couple of months, every year, we come up with something that's different. Because if you want to have a sign of vitality, you must go out of your comfort zone. If I've established that we have dinner together every evening, that's after a year or 2 years, that's not enough to sustain a healthy relationship. If I want to have an exciting relationship, I should find a different way to another activity, finding an extra time to have that relationship. Did I make myself clear? Yes, Ali, why are you laughing?
Try missing a meal or two. See how well the relationship goes.
But it's also a two-way street. She also has to,
They're both sides, right? And sometimes only one try to keep saying the other. There's no doubt. The idea here is that to be married and do things the way you did 5 years and 10 years and 15 years ago, it's not going to work. Even if both agree to it, you cannot call it a relationship. You call it that they had a relationship, they have established relationship, but they don't have a relationship. Did I make myself clear?
Yes.
If I tell it to a young couple, they might not agree because they don't, they didn't have, they
been there.
didn't, right, they've not been there. And this is what the rabbi is going to talk about. So if I was raised in the Jewish tradition, and I study Torah every day, and I pray 3 times a day, and I keep kosher, you can call me someone who is observant Jew, you can call me doing what God wants, but I'm not God's servant. If I want to be God's servant, I have to go out of my way to do something that I didn't do until now. I have to find better ways to relate to God, which did not exist until now. So if I study 101 times, after a while, it becomes normal. I have to do 102, and then I have to do 103. And the same applies with children or any relationship. Here it is in the text. I want to finish today.
Thanks, Rabbi.
We
ended on 226.
right on the bottom of 226.
I thought it was that, Heidi, I thought it was 27, but it talks about 101 times.
I gave it by heart. I don't think we studied it. I may be wrong. I'm reading the bottom 226. He now goes on, the Rebbe, to say that even one who is not naturally endowed with these traits favorable to God's service may yet come under the category of he who serves him not, says the Rebbe. So too, he who is not internally studious but has accustomed himself to study diligently so that this habit has become his second nature. Thus, diligence is now natural for him. For him too, the hidden love of God is now sufficient unless he wishes to study more than he usually does. I just want to talk about mention that the hidden love of God, we touched upon, we'll get into a much greater detail about the hidden love of God, what it means, but it's a natural love that exists within each person that needs to be awakened. The rabbi is saying if someone got used to a habit, he don't need to be loving God, but he's doing it out of a habit. So he does not have to be challenged or fight anything. To do so, he must arouse a conscious love of God in his heart. Only such a love can supply the strength necessary to free himself from the restraints of his acquired nature. This explains the Talmudic statement that he who serves God refers to one who reviews his studies 101 times, while he who serves him not refers to one who reviews his studies only 100 times. He who serves him not is not a wicked man, he's a righteous man, he's a perfect person, but he serves him not, he does not serve God. So the Rebbe, it seems strange that this 101st revision should outweigh all the previous 100 and should earn the student a designation of one who he serves God. However, when we appreciate the struggle one must face in order to learn more than this custom, this is readily understood, as Alter Rebbe goes on to explain. So if I want to go out of a habit, I go one extra time. There was a famous Chassid who says that if you have a pleasure and you enjoy studying Torah, how do you serve God? By studying over and over and repeating the same study. Why? Because then you don't have the pleasure of discovering something new, but you do it just to remember it. By doing so, you're going out of the ordinary by serving God. This is so because in those Talmudic days, it was customary to review each lesson 100 times. Everybody who studied Torah studied it 100 times, simply so they should remember, because they can't go back to a reference or book and review it again. So they needed to remember everything they studied. Thus, to review 100 times did not require any effort. It was second nature. Only the 101st revision, which required effort beyond the student's custom, could gain him the appellation of he who serves God. The Talmud illustrates this by analogy of the market of donkey drivers. The drivers would charge 1 zuz for 10 parsi Persian miles, but demanded 2 zuz for driving 11 parsi. For driving an 11th mile exceeded their customary practice. So for 10 parsi, 10 meal, they would charge 1 zuz. For 11, 1/10 extra, they'll charge double. Why? Says the Rebbe. Because we continue on page 328. Therefore, this 101st revision, which is beyond the normal practice to which the student has been accustomed since his childhood, is equivalent to all the previous 100 revisions combined. Says the rabbi doesn't explain why. No, simply because it was out of the ordinary. It's out of the way. Therefore, they charged 9 times more. In fact, its quality surpasses them in its great strength and power, so that it is only this one extra revision which entitles the student to be called he who serves God. In other words, you have 100 times and you have 1 time. It's not equal, it's above the 100. For in order to change his habitual nature, he must arouse within himself the love of God by contemplating God's greatness in his mind, in order to master the nature that is in the left part of the heart, the seat of the animal soul, which is full of the blood of the animal soul originating in Klippa, whence comes this nature, and the power of his love enables him to transcend his nature. And this, the overpower one's animal soul through the love of God generated by meditation, is a perfect service of a Beinoni. That's the job of a Beinoni, to go out of the ordinary, to be a servant of God. An alternative type of service for a Beinoni is to arouse to a revealed state the love of God inherently found hidden in his heart. As the rabbi explained, thereby to control the nature that is in the left part of the heart. This too is called a service of serving God, although an imperfect service, to wage war against his nature, an inclination by arousing the love hidden in his heart. If, however, he wages no war at all, not engaging even in the lesser struggle of arousing the love hidden within him, that is, when he studies only to the limits of his nature, a natural diligence, then although he employs his hidden love of God in his divine service, yet this love in itself can in no way be credited to his service, and he is therefore called he who serves him not. To be this designated one who serves God, the Beinoni must engage in a struggle within his evil inclination, either through a love of God born of meditation, or at least by arousing his hidden love. And that's the end of chapter 15. So again, to summarize, the Rabbi was speaking about two parts. The first part is the fact that our Benoni always is struggling, and that's part of the reason God created us, to struggle and to go out of our comfort zone. And the second part the Rabbi is talking about, once we achieve habit, we must realize this is not the place for a Benoni. A Benoni must go out of his habit and use his energy to go out of the way to serve God. This is the difference between someone who studied 100 times versus 101. Just to give you an introduction to the next chapter. A story. There was a husband and wife who came to a marriage counselor. And the marriage counselor turned to the wife and says, what's the problem? She says, I have a big problem. My husband never buys me gifts. You don't want to buy me gifts? She don't deserve that, the husband says. She's not kind. She's not that. I don't want to give her any gifts. So the counselor said to the husband, you know what? Even if she don't deserve that, even if you hate giving her gifts, that's part of the marriage. You have to give your wife gifts. Do it because that's part of the marriage. The next evening, the husband comes home with a big crate, a huge crate that two men are carrying into the house. The wife is excited. Maybe he bought a new washer, a new entertainment center. So she turned to him with a smile. She says, thank you, dear. What's in the box? He says, I got you a box full of gifts. Lots of gifts. Every time you feel the need to get a gift, stick your hand into the box and pick something. There's going to be chocolates, there's going to be flowers, there's going to be toys, iPhone, laptops, iPads. What do you think the wife should do?
Start grabbing the gifts.
So in Judaism, we would call it a cause for divorce.
On what?
A cause.
A cause for divorce. Why? Herman, why I see you're not happy. Is that something you did? Okay, she says you never did it. Otherwise, the reason is the idea of a gift is to express my heart's desire. When you give somebody a gift, especially a spouse, is because you love them and you're on a show and you're willing to spend money to show. But when someone gives you a box full of gifts and says for the next 10 years, you've got all the gifts you want, he did not put his heart. So it's missing this life of the gift. This is the chapter the Rabbi is going to talk about. What happened when we have no emotions? We spoke about the brains can control the heart. Remember, this is what we talked about, that the Benoni has control over his thought, speech, and action. And we went through details. Says the Rebbe, there are two problems with doing it without having the emotions, the desire to do it. And I think I shared just before, A, it's not going to last. You cannot force yourself to doing something continuously. And B, you're missing the life. It's like a dead body, a body without soul, soulless. And therefore, it's not just like someone giving a box full of gifts to his wife and says, for the next 10 years, you'll have all the gifts you want. That's the way we are when we serve God without the heart. And how do we deal with this? The Rabbi is going to talk about emotions, how to awaken emotion, because it's a very difficult task from the other three, for one of the three. And a third one, what if I have to bypass the emotions? This is going to be chapter 16. Chapter 17 is going to talk about the hidden love of God. The Rabbi will expand on that chapter 20. But next week, next lesson will enable us to learn how to awaken our emotion towards God. So when we serve God, we do it with a heart, not just because we have to. We'll stop right here and continue next week. Be well, everybody.
When we're done with the whole book, you start all over again.